I already know I'm gonna get called a glazer and a shill for some of the takes I'm gonna make in this video, but I digress. Over this past week, we've learned more and more about the new hero joining Overwatch's vast hero roster, Vendetta, as her playtest weekend is this weekend coming, nicely coinciding with the OWCS World Finals at DreamHack Stockholm. There's only one teeny tiny bit of controversy surrounding the character, more so her kit than anything else. From what we've seen so far, she seems very familiar, almost like a character from a different hero shooter game. Yeah, everyone's comparing her to Magic from Marvel Rivals because they're both women with big swords who have fairly similar abilities to one another, but one came out about a year or so before the other. Now, me personally, I don't think this is entirely intentional from Blizzard and the Overwatch team. I don't think they just straight up copy and pasted Magic and made her an Italian gladiator just because it was an easy cop-out, but because it's kind of difficult to add a hero like Vendetta or Magic and make them unique, because they're very limited to what they could realistically do with their sword. Just think about all of the heroes that Rivals have that feel similar to heroes from Overwatch. A lot of people have compared the likes of Spider-Man to Genji, Venom to Wrecking Ball, and Scarlet Witch to Moira, because on the surface, they play very similarly and for the most part have a similar kit. Yet we all know that they're not entirely carbon copies of one another because they do have their differences that make them slightly more unique. The way I'd like to imagine it is like comparing two coffee shops to one another. On the surface, they both sell coffee, but they tend to use different blends and machines to make their own coffee that tastes unique to that specific coffee shop. Starbucks tastes like Starbucks, Pret a Manger tastes like Pret a Manger, and Costa tastes like Costa. But they are all still serving coffee. Let's do some actual side-by-side comparisons of these two heroes to get a better understanding of people's frustrations with Blizzard. Obviously, they both have swords, that's not really rocket science, but Vendetta can block with her sword, so I guess that makes her slightly more unique. The most similar ability or abilities that they have compared to one another are their dashes, but Vendetta specifically has two abilities where she dashes, one of which where she simply throws her sword forwards and flies to it. Their whirlwind abilities and their air slash abilities where they both fire a projectile slash, kinda like Reinhardt's Fire Strike. See, the comparisons to other heroes are endless because there simply isn't that much you can do with melee-based heroes, unless you specifically design them to be like Brig, where they're so stupidly unique that it's almost ridiculous. There's also the very obvious differences of Vendetta having a different ult to Magic, and the Overwatch perk system having a pretty big impact on pretty much every hero's kit to a certain extent. But are they enough to make Vendetta unique enough to not be compared to Magic? I don't really know. What I'm trying to say is that yes, Magic and Vendetta do feel really similar because their kits are nearly indistinguishable from one another, but the differences that they do have are enough to make them stand out from one another. Vendetta isn't a carbon copy of Magic, but rather takes inspiration from her. Some might argue that she takes too much inspiration from her to the point where it becomes overly derivative. But let's go back to that coffee shop analogy. You physically cannot make coffee any more than it is at surface level. Sure, you can use different beans, add flavored syrups like vanilla and caramel, different amounts of milk to make the coffee weaker, etc, etc. But at the end of the day, it's still coffee. Just as a woman with a big-ass sword is a woman with a big-ass sword. There isn't much variety to that specific thing, and the moment that you try to force some form of variety into that different thing to make it more unique, it becomes something entirely new. But that just about does it for this video. So, to summarize, Vendetta isn't a carbon copy of Magic to the point where NetEase should sue Blizzard, but she is pretty derivative to the point where it makes Blizzard seem a little bit lazy. Is it their fault? Yes and no, because as I've said multiple times throughout this video, there is only so much you can do with a melee hero that wields a big sword. But they could have made something a bit more unique by choosing literally any other melee weapon. They could have even gone back to their roots and stolen from TF2, adding a character that functions almost like the Spy without being a second Sombra. The problem is that Blizzard have kind of already done everything they possibly could do when it comes to a melee-based hero, because that specific genre of hero is extremely hard to get variation out of. If they make another hero that punches, they risk making a hero that feels like Ramatra in Nemesis form or Doomfist. If they make a hero with a spear or glaive, they risk making another hero like Brig, where they're a slightly more ranged melee hero. You see the point I'm trying to make? When it comes to melee heroes, you can't make anything unique, because one way or another, it will be derivative of another melee hero, whether it be from the same game or completely different games. And, with Overwatch having 45 playable heroes with the addition of Vendetta, the team are obviously going to struggle when making more unique characters.